Hello guys and welcome to my first tutorial here on YouTube. Today I want to show you how you can make this animation, this short loop, inside Cinema4d and After Effects. So let's start. So the first thing we need to do is to create our character. And for this we use a program called Adobe Fuse. It's part of the Adobe Creative Cloud and you can download it if you have an active subscription. You can get some cheap active subscriptions for student license maybe, or you will have one if you use Photoshop or Illustrator or After Effects. So that's pretty much required at this point. You can open Adobe Fuse and you will greeted with this screen. So Adobe Fuse is like a character designer in The Sims. You can compare it with that, and you just build your character from the head to the toes, and it's pretty simple. So let me just grab one of these guys. How should we do this? Let's pick him. Male scan. And your character will be created. You can change all the facial features, you can change the color, the hair, and all that stuff. There are basically no limits to this, but for the sake of this tutorial, we just leave it as basic as it is. So let's pick a body. I think this body will suit him well. So he currently has no legs and no arms, so we can fix that by just clicking. It's just very easy. Like the skins are very basic. You can tell it's like a simple 3D model, but once we apply clothes on something, you won't notice that it's not that detailed or not that accurate, let's say that. But it's pretty cool because it's free once you got the Adobe Suite, and yeah, it's pretty well integrated into Mixamo. That's what we found out next. Sorry for my bad English, by the way. I'm natively speaking German, but I want to try it and record this tutorial in English, so yeah, I can reach a bigger audience maybe. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, so let's go to the clothing tab and try something here. What about this? Looks pretty cool, this shirt. Or maybe this one. The actual fabric, or the, how would you say, the color of it doesn't matter at all, because we will change it completely inside Cinema4d. Okay, let's stick with that. Go to the bottoms, and I choose dress pants. I think that is a good fit. So, and just to mix things up, I will give him a hat. Let's see which hat we can give him. I think the classic, in Germany we call it a melon hat, I think. I just don't know anymore. I'm not sure, but it looks pretty cool and it will give it a bit of a different spin. So once we're happy with our character, maybe we can just give him some footwear, some shoes. Let's try the basic boots. I think it doesn't matter. That looks good. Okay, so once we're happy with that, we click Send to Mixamo. Then you have to name your character model, and I will just call him Tutorial Guy. Basic as that. And then the Creative Cloud is uploading your model to Mixamo, and Mixamo should open right away. So now inside Mixamo, the upload is complete, and I have logged in with my Creative Cloud account. You see there is a feature called the Auto Rigger. And rigging is something you do to a model and give him bones, like your arm bones and just spline and just all this basic stuff, so you can move your character according to real human physics. And that's pretty useful. You're not limited to doing this to humans. You can do this to any kind of monsters. And here you see it's completed. The auto rigging feature is complete, and our character just moves and has every bone in his body that we can manipulate later. So we have some options here to choose from. there are facial blend shapes. We just leave that as disabled. I literally don't know what this does, so I just leave it as it is. And then we have the skeleton LOD, and here you can choose. You can have the standard skeleton, which is fine for me. Like, it has a really high count of like bones. You can control each finger with 3 different or 4 different anchor points, just as you see here in the image. And if I change this to 3, then I have like these, you know, these old like gloves your mother gave you when you were a child, where you just have a thumb. Like, that's basically that. So you just can control the thumb and the index finger and no other finger. But maybe we just choose the standard skeleton. Not planning on doing something tricky with his fingers, but if you wanna just pick the standard skeleton, your computer should handle it. So we click Update Rig because we made a change here, and just let it do its thing for a minute. So the rigging is now finished again, and we just hit the finish button. Proceed with this new character. Your previous characters will not be saved. That's okay. I'm okay with that. And here you can do different things. You can either download the model right away, so you can use it in Cinema4d or other 3D software, or you can animate it inside Mixamo. And this is where Mixamo, I think, really shines. Like, you have so many pre-animated models in here, or pre-animated rigs, that you can just apply to your model and just export the whole thing with keyframes ready to go. So what I did in my original was I think I searched for drunk, and I chose a drunk walk, and I think this is the walk I chose. Maybe this one. I don't know. Let's mix things up. Let's use this one and just click it. And you know, you see your character walking here. So he speeds up and slows a bit down. Let's try a different. Okay, that seems pretty cool. But that's not all you can do. Each and every style of movement has its own unique indicators or buttons to the left you can manipulate to decrease or increase the effect of the animation. So if we just turn down the speed, he moves slower, and we can turn up the drunkenness, like on the weekends. I think like he's really drunk now. He's just losing his shit when walking, and we can just put some more speed in it. I think that's pretty wanky. Let's try to decrease that a bit. Oh man, that's crazy. I think we should really go for him. Like, he's really drunk. Oh my god. We can pull the stride a bit back, I think. Yeah, I think that's okay. You can customize it whatever you want. Like, you can not make him drunk. You can make him walk in a straight line, or walk backwards, or standing up and falling down again and standing up again. As long as it loops, it's no problem. So what should we do now? We just click in place. That way the character doesn't actually move. So the coordinates are staying the same. That's pretty good for our kind of animation we're doing, because we don't want to move the character in the actual 3D space. We just want to make it look like the character moves, but the only thing that really moves are the scene objects. So the character and the camera are standing basically still and just doing this movement. So you can tick this box in basically every animation here in Mixamo. So what can we do now? We can just hit download, and here you have some different settings. You can choose the format. We use it for FBX. That's pretty fine with us. We just choose our frame rate. That's pretty important. And myself, I do animations in 24 frames a second. Sorry, because I just save up on render time. I don't think there's a big difference between 24 and 30. There is a big difference between 30 and 60 frames, but it just doubled your render time. And yeah, I'm pretty cool with short render times. So I click 24 and keyframe reduction, I select none because we don't need this. And then you hit download and it's preparing your download and you will get the completed file in your downloads folder. So our download is finished. As you can see here, it's called walking and there's a 2 for my animation because I already have an animation called walking inside my downloads. So we can close Mixamo at this point and just jump into Cinema4d. So basically I'm here at my standard scene. I like to use Octane render. That's a big thing in this tutorial because we will achieve the light effect in Octane render. If you don't have Octane render, please consider looking into it. It's not that expensive when you compare it to the Cinema4d standard license. It's like 20 bucks or something, but you can really benefit from it. I use GPU rendering. I render with my NVIDIA GTX and it's tremendously faster than my CPU rendering. So yeah, I use Octane for this tutorial. The first thing you want to do is go into your project settings, and you do this by pressing Command and D. And for me, they're already open in here, and I set my keyframes to the same exact keyframes I chose when I downloaded the animation and the rig. So it's 24 for me. That's perfect. Okay, what should we do now? You can actually drag and drop this, but I like to prefer the file and merge object or Control Shift and O. If you do that, a window pops up and you just select your animation, press OK, and then yeah, here you have some other settings I won't get into now because that doesn't matter just for this tutorial. You just click OK. And there it is. If you zoom in here, there is your character model. And yeah, you can play it looking like that. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So let's find out how long this animation is. It's exactly 60 frames long. So we just reduce our total keyframes to 60. And now you should have a perfect loop. Let's look at this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's what we want. So your total animations is 60 frames long. And yeah, you can render this pretty quick. And it's just so good and so seamless that no one will notice. So we can stop in here. Let's first organize our files in here. So all these files are related to a character. These are the bones, these green icons, and with them you can change the orientation of your fingers maybe, or the whole arm, or the upper body parts. You can change basically everything, but please just remind you that there are keyframes in this rig. So if you change something, please change the whole keyframe, or otherwise you will change a lot of things. And once you press play, all these things get discarded and you have to do it again. So, okay, let's just look at the orientation our character goes. Okay, it's that way, so we want to film him from behind. I think that looks pretty cool. Okay, we select all these files in here and just press Alt-G, which groups it into a new null object. And we can rename this null object to maybe something like character. Okay. So please make sure to zero out your null. That's pretty important. So your object just stays in the world center and the null itself is centered. So once you have everything in here, you're pretty much done with the character. What should I say? It's that easy. The next thing we do is making the background, or let's say the floor, the scene of the whole project. These little mountains here, these white glossy little mountains, they are a basic feature of Cinema4d, and you can achieve it by just clicking here and using the landscape option. So you see it's pretty big right now, but we leave everything as it is, and that's a cool thing. The only thing we need to focus on is the seed. We change the seed value to get some different results for the right and for the left side. That's all we do. So, okay, let's look at the properties here. The X, Y, and Z coordinates or scales for this landscape are 600, 100, and 600. So if you want to move it halfway to the right and halfway to the left, you have to move it by 300 centimeters. And that's no problem, we can do this. Just go in here, pick which axis you want to change. It's not the Y, it's not the Z, it's the X, and just place in here at 300, so it moves to the left. And you see, it just aligns perfect with the world center, and our character is amazingly in the center. So we now just copy this one and make it minus 300. So let's go to the Object tab and just set the seed value to a different number, like 50. So it just looks different. Maybe we can increase the scale a bit, like maybe to 1.5 on both, so it's uniform. Yeah, and that's basically it. You now have to the left and to the right a different kind of little mountain structure. That's pretty cool. So how do we get those mountains to the front and to the back so everything looks seamless? So that's no problem. Cinema4d has the cloner object, and we will use this for our advantage. So just click the cloner and drag the first landscape right in here. So you will see some things get pretty messed up here, but we will fix it no matter. Just go into the properties of the cloner in the object properties and change the Y amount to 0. So that's basically perfect. And the count you can change up to 6. So the only thing we want to change is now the Z axis. And remember, it's 300 centimeters in the halfway. 600 centimeters is one full length of this landscape. So we just type 600 in here and it's producing the thing to the back. So let's do minus 600, and you see all those 6 copies of the original landscape are aligning perfectly along this way. And maybe we don't need 6, like 4 are probably cool. I think that's good. So, but now you see, okay, the cloner has reset all my transformation to the landscape, and that's no problem. Just change the landscape coordinates back to 0. So go into the cloner and just change here the X back to minus 300. And yeah, we can do the same now for our landscape number 2. Just put it in here, reset the X, and go into the cloner object, reset the Y, and go into the Z and make it minus 600. So, and here a count of 4 also. Now go to the coordinates of the cloner and just put a 300 in here, and you see it's lined up perfectly. So, okay, now I think it's a good time to think about the camera movement, or not the movement, like the camera position. And I think that's a pretty cool spot, but we will fix the whole angle and stuff with the coordinates right now. With Octane, you have to use a special camera and special lights, or likewise other tags for the lights in the camera. The camera settings itself are the same, but for Octane to recognize it, you have to use special tags on the objects. So we will do this by clicking the red button here, but that's a custom layout I made. You can find it under Octane and the live viewer window. You can find it under objects and then Octane camera. So put it in here and it snaps to your current viewport position. So if I check this box, I'm currently in the camera. So if I hit render here, we will probably don't see anything because we haven't set any lights yet, but we will fix that. Just focus on the camera a bit. We will go into the object mode or the object tab from the camera and change the angle or the millimeters of the camera to a wide angle. I think that looks pretty cool. Then we tap out of the camera mode with this button, and then we can just orientate ourselves better in the scene. We take the camera and move it a bit closer to our object. Like so. I think that looks pretty cool. So go back to the camera itself, go to the coordinates, and now I have to move it a bit because I didn't see the numbers here. Just reset for now the pitch. I think that looks pretty good. And maybe we can bring it a bit down like that. And just even out this number. So it was like 170 degrees. So I think it's minus 180 just to bring it to a round number that works just nice for us in this case. So, and I think, you basically see a bit, you can see a bit more of the scene. I think we can achieve that by just increasing or decreasing the millimeter count on this camera to make it more wide angle. So we basically choose super wide. And I think that looks super cool. So tap out of the camera mode and just bring it back just a bit. And just stop the Octane render here. Click play, and that's what we have so far. I think looks pretty cool. So once this is set up, we can do something about the lighting in the scene. I think the lighting is the main object in the scene, but I like to keep it very basic. So the lighting just underlines the movement of the character, which is the second most important object in the whole scene. And I can add a light by just using my shortcuts here, but I will use this object tab, lights, and then use an Octane area light. And you see where this thing is going. There is already a box light set up in the world 0 axis, and you can just push it down to the back, and you see it's lighting up the wrong direction in the scene. So we just press R, grab this green thing, press it, and then hold Shift to rotate it in incremental steps, and just rotate it 180 degrees so it faces our character and our camera itself. So the next thing we have to do is pull it a bit up and make it even bigger with T. So I think I like this one. So maybe just pull it a bit further down the line. And now we can render, and now we can see, okay, what's going on in here. Let's have a look. We go inside our light and inside our light tag. So you click this, or you can go to the Octane light tag here. Let's just reduce the power to maybe 20. Oh, that's not 20. 20. And just don't touch anything else yet. So let's have a look. Okay. Now I go to my settings, and they're coming in here. I just reduce the samples. That value maybe on 2000 for your machine too. Maybe your machine can handle this value. Mine doesn't, so I just have to take it down to 200 just for quality sakes, and just speed things up basically. So okay, let's have a look what is going on here. Maybe we have made an error, and just because of the orientation of our character model, we have rotated the light in the wrong direction. We will see. Just grab this, rotate it back, and yes, we have rotated it in the wrong direction. Sorry guys, but it depends. Like maybe your character animation is just twisted the other side, then just make the light visible, basically. If the scene is dark, as in my example, you just change the light orientation. So I just go back into coordinates and change this to 0, because minus 360 and 0 is basically the same. Yeah, now you can see it coming together, I think. We can maybe place the camera a bit nearer to the object, like this. Yeah, I think that's cool. And maybe a bit higher. So let's use the coordinates and a bit higher. So I think that looks pretty cool. And now we have to scale up our light source like this. So that looks pretty cool. One thing we have to do before getting into the movement is decreasing the power of the light to 10 is maybe still too much. Uncheck surface brightness first and then turn up the light amount. Yeah, I think that's cool. So, and maybe I bring the camera a bit more back again, because I think it's maybe too near. Yeah, I think that's cool. So, and one thing we have to do is bring the light a bit back. You see, it's more like a manual adjustment and looking at things and just knowing, okay, I have to change it. It looks wrong. I have to change it. So, okay, that's pretty cool. And now increase the light size. And you're left with this big light. I will go into the light settings in the Octane tag and just crank up the power a bit. It's maybe not enough, so let's choose like 200. And I think 200 is the sweet spot for this animation. So, what should we do next? I think we should do the movement of the floor, of the landscape right now. And that's pretty easy. Just collapse these two cloners, select them both, and bring them into a null object again, and just call it floor. So, the only thing you have to do now is just go to the 0 frame or the first frame in your scene, and then go into the coordinates of the null object. That's pretty important. Okay, let's figure this out. We have to press the record button here, this little red dot. It sets a keyframe at the 0 spot. Then we move over to the last keyframe, which is frame 60. And you notice that this circle becomes shallow and it's just a red circle now. We type in here our next value. The background is shifting towards us, so we have to use a positive value because our scene is twisted upside down. You have to change it by just looking at it. This way it needs to go. So we are starting, and it's pretty important to notice, we are starting at the middle of the whole landscape. So if I zoom out, our landscape from here to the character is exactly 300 centimeters. So our animation needs to stop exactly in the middle of the next landscape to be seamless. So I go back to our camera, go back to the floor, I'm on the last frame, and I just type in here 600. So it just jumps one whole unit and is in the exact same place as on the last landscape, like section. Let me call it that. But don't leave it as it is, just click the yellow circle and it will turn to a red dot. And that means your keyframe is actually set. And now you can play it. And it should loop pretty seamless. I think that looks pretty cool. So that's basically it for the animation part. Your animation is pretty much done at this point. You can change the light color. That's what I did in the original. I just did it a bit more to the blue, so it looks kind of cool. And the next thing I did was creating some materials for my scene. And it was pretty easy too. So I go to materials and choose a new glossy material. It now appears here. Double click it. It's on the other monitor. And I just disable the diffuse and go to the index and crank up the index a bit. Like, no, that's too much. 2.5. The index value is basically a value which is assigned to glass and reflectivity and just how light reflects or go through some glossy objects. And we use an index of 2.5. If you want to simulate some specific real life reflections, you have to just look up the index value. It's basically on the internet. So, okay, let's use this and go to the roughness and crank up the roughness a bit. And maybe I think we can leave the diffuse for now in and just look how it looks, basically. What we can do is remove all the materials from our character if you don't want to keep them. That's important. If you want to keep them, don't remove them. I remove them and I take the Octane Glossy and just drop it in here. I select it, then press Ctrl and drop it to the one beneath. So it just copies around. And our whole character is now white and glossy, and I think this is a pretty cool look. But once applied, we can change the material and change the look of it. So we can change it to a black diffuse. And now we are getting somewhere near the original look. I think that's pretty cool. I maybe go into the light and just check the surface brightness and take this down. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Let's do it this way. And I think we change the camera settings up a bit again. It's like just looking and adjusting. We bring it down, press E, bring it down, and maybe rotate it a bit up, like 4.5 degrees. Looks cool to me. Yeah, I think that looks really cool. It just makes the landscape more dramatic and just underlines the movement of the character a bit more. Okay, so let's have a look in our viewport how this animation is going. You see it's stopping and then going again. I think in this case it's a pretty cool effect. In my original animation, I can show it to you again. The movement of the background is steady because the movement of my character is steady. I will show you how you can make this effect. It's pretty easy. You just select your floor null, go into window, and then timeline dope sheet or shift F3. And the dope sheet editor is pretty complicated. You can use F curves to do things. You can do all kind of tweaking to your animations in much detail, but we don't need it at this point. We just click on the floor and just select this option here. It just makes the keyframes linear and they don't have a curve. So they don't stop and smooth out and start again. They are just linear motion. So we can look on the result. It's like just perpetual linear motion, not stopping anytime soon. But we don't want this, so I go back to the dope sheet editor and just select the floor, make sure, and just hit this button to make it smooth again. And now it starts, speeds up, and stops, just as our character does. And I think this is pretty cool for this scenario. Okay, so we are almost finished. Like, I just want to increase the light a bit more, and maybe maybe I remove the pitch in the camera so it's just straight. And I think that's pretty much it. Maybe bring the camera a bit more in and a bit more up, just to adjust things. I think that's the sweet spot. I think this looks amazing. So now maybe just decrease the light intensity a bit, maybe to 10. Yeah, I think 10 is cool, so you can just see some of the spots in the ground plate on the floor, the landscape. That's the word. So, okay, what are we doing next? We go click on Settings in the Octane Settings Manager, and we go to our just basic kernel settings. I render with path tracing. You can render the scene with direct lighting, it's okay. But if you want more accurate results and just an overall better looking image, I prefer path tracing. But you need a bit more beefy PC or GPU to make it in a considerable small amount of time. Maximum samples, I just choose 250. I think that's okay. Diffuse depth, specular depth, and scatter depth I don't touch. They're good as they are. The only thing I'm going to do is go to the camera imager and choose the denoiser and enable denoising. That's pretty important. And the second thing is click on post, enable post processing, and then play around with the, oh, where should I put it? Play around with the bloom and the glare. So I just will show you what it does. When I put up the bloom, it just blows out these lights. That's pretty cool effect, I think. And the glare does the same thing, but you know, you see it just does this with this like straight lines in it. I just don't know how to describe it in English. Please forgive me about that. So I use bloom power to just make it a bit better and just reduce the glare to 0.001, so the minimum glare. And just play around with the bloom, like maybe you will go for a full overblown look. Maybe it looks cool with some post-processing and After Effects, or maybe you will remove it completely. But to embrace the light and the whole shine and the like God ray effect, you can say, I will use bloom. It's a pretty easy way to make this without having much of a disadvantage in render time. So I'm okay with this, maybe a bit less. Yeah, like this is perfect. Okay, so good so far. Let's jump into the render settings. There are an Octane here. You click here. Make sure to choose the Octane renderer for your render settings. It's standard set to standard or to physical, depending on what you used for your last project. The output I put to 1280 pixels. That's a pretty good format for uploading to Instagram. And make sure to set the frame rate to the exact same frame rate as your project and to the exact same frame rate as your character animation in Mixamo, so 24. And for the frame range, we want all frames to be rendered, 0 to 60. So that's basically it. Now go to the save path and just choose a path where you want your whole images, your image sequence to be saved. I have already rendered mine, so I won't do this anymore, but just choose the PNG format. I think it's the best format in case of render capacity and disk space, let me say that, and you have manual control over different things when you choose PNG. With a color depth of 16-bit, that's pretty important, you want 16-bit. The name, just ignore this. Image color profile, you can leave that as it is. We don't need an alpha channel, so yeah, we can basically start rendering. You can start rendering by sending this to the picture viewer, or you can render it by sending it to the render queue. I prefer the picture viewer so I see the live results and maybe can make changes and quit rendering the project if I see something happening. So I think that's pretty much it, and yeah, just let it render. Maybe if your PC is not that good, render it overnight, but it should be done in like 1 hour to 2 hours. And once it's done, we jump into After Effects. So we are now heading into After Effects to finish up the project, render it out, and yeah, maybe post it to our social media accounts, whatever. Just keep in mind, I will use the original footage for this tutorial and for this After Effects part, and not the footage we just created, because I don't want to be bothered to render this again. So just bear with me, it's basically the same thing. You just open up a new project in Adobe After Effects and right click here and then import a new file. So, and I'm currently here in my old animation files. There are frames. It should look exactly the same in your folder. So there are 72 frames for my old animation. And I just click the first one and you will notice a difference here. You have the first frame is for you is this 0000. Like there is no 0001 as the first frame in your particular file system. And this is a reason, because the 00 file is the same as the 0072 or 0060. Yeah, 60, the 60 file. The last and the first file or frame basically are the same. That's what I'm trying to say. Just remove the last or the first, and I just removed the first one. So I start with 1, 2, and so on. Sorry if that was a bit complicated. It's basically just to make it loop perfectly, you have to remove this one double frame. That's basically it. So just select Lightwalker 1, in my case, I just call it that way, and check PNG sequence and import as footage. So then just press import and you notice, okay, it's in here. But there's a bit of an error here happening. It's just the interpretation of the file. It's set to 30 frames a second. But that's no problem. We can right click, interpret footage, and click main. And then another window pops up and we can just set our keyframes assumed in this clip to 24. Okay, cool. So just drag your composition or your file, your image sequence onto this icon and create a new composition. And now you will see it's already perfectly 3 seconds long and perfectly looped. So if we play it back, it lags a bit because of some RAM or GPU issues I have in my crappy little machine. But I think it's looking pretty good and it loops perfectly. So you can't spot a loop. That's what we want. So now it's time for color correction. And the color correction I've done is pretty simple, so I will show you. First, right click in here and create a new adjustment layer. An adjustment layer is like a layer on top of your image sequence, so you can just uniformly edit and color correct all the footage beneath this adjustment layer. That's pretty useful if you use more layers of footage, or maybe you add some text or different things you want just to make it look all the same. Basically, you have to do this. So I go to the adjustment layer, right click, effect, color correction, and then just choose the curves. If you know Adobe Photoshop, it's basically this. It's the gradation curves, I think it's called in Photoshop. Just drag in this lower spot the point a bit to the right, and in this spot a bit up. So this just adds a bit contrast, and I think that's pretty cool. The next thing I've added is effect, then stylize. Where is it? Here, stylize, and glow. So I added another glow to the scene because I think the glow in After Effects is pretty cool and we can use it. Bring the threshold up to 100 and the radius, bring it tremendously up, and then just play around with the glow intensity. And I think that's all you have to do. Maybe decrease both a bit to don't make it that overwhelming, but I think this looks pretty cool. So one last thing we can do is go to Effects, Color Correction, and then choose, where is it? Oh man, I use Adobe After Effects mostly in German. Here is it, Lumetri color. So I think that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool effect set because you have a simple temperature change, and yeah, you can play around with this. So like you can make it a bit more a cold scene, adding blue to drag it into the minus territory, or make it a bit warmer. But for my example, I will keep it at a pretty cold temperature, maybe make it a bit colder so it looks like an icy landscape or something like this. -5 or maybe -10, -11, that's a pretty good number. So, and we basically finished with this project. I hope you like it, and you can export it easily by just going to Composition and add to Render Queue, or just add to Adobe Media Encoder Render Queue, and I would prefer using this. So just click on this, and the render queue just opened up on my different monitor. Just give it some time. Here it is. So let's expand that, and your project will be transferred to the render queue of the Adobe Media Encoder. You have it right in here. So in here you can change the file format, but H.264 is a pretty good format. It's lightweight, it's an MP4 file, and you can upload it pretty easily to Instagram or to YouTube. It's widely accepted. So in this particular options, you don't have to change anything. Just click to the output and change the location and the name of your final video file, and then just click save, and then just hit this green button and you will be able to render your final image out, or your final video out, sorry. So after exporting this, and it shouldn't take as long as rendering your Cinema4d project, because it's just applying some special effects or some color correction to your video, which has been already created, so it should be pretty fast. You're ending up with a, let me just grab it in here and just play it in here. You're ending up with an MP4 file, which is pretty small, minus like 4 MB, and you can upload it anywhere you want. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Upload your work to Instagram and tag me. You can follow me at Franco Melani, and you will also find the link in the description. One plug I have to make is please join my Discord server. So that's the whole reason I do this tutorial in the first place. Join my Discord server. It's a brand new server. There are only like 4 to 6 members on there right now, time recording of this video, but I'm planning to create a big community of 3D artists so we can share our work and yeah, share our knowledge basically. Consider joining the Discord, it's free, and if you like the tutorial, consider subscribing and liking the video. Thank you.